What's going down, people? It's your boy, Myer Krah, back again with another episode of Here for the Dads podcast. As you can see, we got a new guest here today. It's Coach BallGame. If you ain't following him already on Instagram, and he's in a bunch of other places too, but that's where I found him. I've been following this guy for a very long time. He is extremely helpful, even if you aren't a coach. I just started coaching this year, and I've probably been following for the past 2 years. You should also start following his podcast as well. I'm going to allow him to talk about that, a little bit about his background, his bio, and all that good stuff. But let me introduce to you Coach BallGame. What's going on, sir? How you doing?
Coach Myer, man, thanks for having me. Happy to be on. All is well
Good.
here. I actually just finished up an episode of my podcast, so the pipes are warmed up, ready to go.
Oh, there we go. Now, what did you guys talk about today, if you can tell? I don't know if
Well,
you're ahead or can you tell what the topic was?
absolutely no. A sneak peek into the episode we just dropped it. We took the summer off. We take summers off because we do lots of coaching camps all around the country. So when the school year begins, we crank up the podcast again. So cranked up season 4 with our top 3 pillars of coaching. Really, what is our foundation as a great coach? So we discuss those pillars. And then we answered a few questions from listeners because fall ball, specifically baseball and softball leagues, are just starting up. So wanted to get everybody off on the right foot. But my podcast and really everything I post on social media, it transcends baseball. It goes into other sports, and as you mentioned, all walks of life. So happy to solve some problems and use things that I've learned, failures and mistakes that I've made in the past, to help others, because it's not an easy gig coaching kids.
Yeah, it is not. And the reason why I started following, because I realized a lot of what you were teaching, even though it was in coaching, was translating a lot to just parenthood, period. Like, essentially everything I do in life is because I got it from a coach, or this is completely different, but I had a lot of dogs growing up. And a lot of things I've learned is from working with dogs. My wife completely hates that, but that's just what it is. So when I'm listening to you talk about, basically just how to approach kids when they're out in the field. It's not necessarily all about technique, but it's how you communicate, your posture, your heart posture as well. And I think parents need to learn that even if they aren't doing a sport. So you're in fall ball and all that stuff right now, but I want to back up and first get a little bit more of your background as far as sports. When did you start? How did you get to this place of coaching coaches?
Yeah. So grew up in North Carolina, right in the middle of the state, little town. We had a little house, but we had a big backyard. Mom, dad, and 2 brothers. They were older. They taught me the game. They taught me all the games. We played basketball, football, soccer. We had a swing set back there, horseshoes. We had it all. But the one that really stuck out to me was baseball, and we couldn't use real balls in the backyard because we'd break the windows in the house. So we would invite the neighbors over and our friends, and we would play this sandlot game with a tennis ball. And if you hit the house, it was a double. If you hit the top of the house, it was a triple. If you hit it over the house, it was a home run. If you hit it across the street, the dog would eat it, just like the movie. So that was my childhood. My mom was all about character development, really taught me to be a good person. My dad was all about joy, finding the joy in everything. So that was a great mix. So played 3 sports all through high school, then went to college at Brown University, and just played baseball there. And proud to say I was able to start all 4 years. Even more proud to say I hold the career hit by pitch record at Brown University. True story.
Oh,
I
wow.
hang my hat on that. But from college, there were no teams in the pros that wanted me. So how do I stay in the game? Well, let's teach the game. Let's coach it. So from Rhode Island, I went across the country like Brad Pitt in my car with $300,
There you
and
go.
stopped in Los Angeles where there was a gig coaching kids. My good buddy from college, Dan Spring, he's still one of my best friends. We played a lot of music together. We were teammates at Brown University. He had a room and a spot for me coaching these youth camps with his kids. I had no dreams or aspirations of becoming, a coach BallGame, but slowly and surely, I learned the ways. I didn't start
Yeah.
out coaching the right way. I started coaching like most coaches do, insecure, anxious, wanting to
Yeah.
win at all costs. Like you said, wanting to teach the skills at a high level. But what I came to find out is this is a life lessons gig. We want to teach as many life lessons as we can, and we want to extend careers as long as we can. Baseball is just the vessel. So once I had that light bulb moment, then I started to really enjoy coaching, and it started to make sense. Meanwhile, kids started to love the game more. So for me, in those 10 years of grad school, watching really good mentors coach in that way, I learned this is about teaching love of play and building character. Those are my top two priorities. Everything else, the wins, the skill development, becomes a byproduct. As I created my own thing here in Orange County, California, of coach ballgame camps and sandlots, I started to realize, oh, there are lots of parents and coaches that need this same learning curve that I had in my 20s. So I really leaned into that the past few years. And when I wake up every morning, I try to create a video on my social medias that will solve a problem for a parent or coach, whether that is teaching a skill, but I think more importantly, just the psychology of it. How do we go about being a fan of our children? How do we go about teaching these young ones to love the game? How do we wrangle the younger ages? And how do we create great memorable practices? Those are things that I'm passionate about and happy to share here on your pod too.
Yeah, man, you said a lot, and it was everything that I was honestly looking for when you started talking about coaches just starting having that anxiousness and not really knowing where to go. And I think different coaches have a little bit of maybe more of one than the other. Like I don't think I've leaned into like we gotta win at all costs. But at the same time, I'm like really trying to dive into I don't want to mess these kids up. Like they're 6U, 5-year-old, 6-year-old guys, and I don't want to get them into the game and they get bored or they go into the game day and they're super scared because we had that too. And it's either because, they're frustrated, they don't know what they're going through or what they're doing, or maybe they're frustrated because they're afraid of the contact. So it's like,
Yeah.
how do I step on the field as a new coach and a father of one of the players? Because then there's that whole curve too. So I feel like I'm stepping into something completely new all over again, the same way I stepped into fatherhood. And the one thing that scares me the most is I don't want to mess this up for these kids.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing is you're being asked to volunteer your time, and a lot of the moms and dads that maybe listen to this podcast, they're asked to volunteer coach. They've never played the sport, or played at a very high level, and they definitely never tried to wrangle a bunch of kids. So it's important for me to share the knowledge that I've gained, where the win really doesn't matter till you're on TV. The skill development and trying to make them the next Michael Jordan or Shohei Ohtani, or Dan Marino, whatever it might be, that is way down the line as well. Where does it start? Well, for me, it starts with building trust with the person. That is a number one. So at the very first practice, whether that's basketball, soccer, football, whatever, we're going to spend 20 minutes and we're just going to get to know each other. Because the coach, if you want to be a great coach, then you're not going to change a game. You're going to change a life. If the kid knows that you care about them as a person, and you ask questions to them about, what's your favorite thing about football, or what's your favorite thing to eat, what's your favorite class in school, who's your favorite superhero. When they know you care about them as a person, they'll love that game more. And
Yeah.
that's the point. You got to get them to love the game you're playing. That way, they'll learn the life lessons when they're 7. They'll learn new life lessons when they're 8. They'll learn how to be a good teammate and a role model and a leader when they're 9. But if you're going to extend this career to gain all those life lessons, you got to start with teaching love of play. And the reason I build trust first is because I know they'll love that game more if they know I care about them. Specifically, I give nicknames for each kid based off things they love. A lot of people think that I come up with the nicknames. No, we have a conversation and I ask them things about them, and we paint a picture of who they are with their nickname. And then I repeat those until I memorize them all and I've got them. But when you give a kid a nickname based off things they've learned, they show up and they're like, oh, you know what? This guy or this gal, they're a grown up, but they're a listener. They're willing to listen to me, and they're not just force feeding football knowledge down my throat. They're actually respecting me, and they care for me as a person. That's huge. And as a first year coach, nobody really talks about that, or nobody is excited about that. They're looking on YouTube for the next great drill in practice, or the next great way to teach this kid how to throw a curveball. The skills are way down the line. There's a whole playbook that we need to read first on just the person, how to mentor. So building trust and nicknames is where I start.
I love that. I literally just gave out nicknames last week because that was something that was done for us when we first started. I remember going out to that football field, and I had never played before. I think I did maybe track 1 or 2 years before that. But going out and going to each coach just to pick up pads and equipment. We went to one coach, he had the ear pads. We went to the next coach, he had the helmets. And during that time, they got a chance to ask us some of those questions. How are you? How's school? Is both your parents in the home? What do you like to do? What's your favorite color? And I was surprised to recognize which coaches remembered a lot of those things about me, and they remembered a lot of things about the other kids. Oftentimes, I see sometimes you get the nicknames because they can't remember your name or don't know how to say your name correctly, so they use that one. But it was a sense of pride when I got my nickname too. It made me want to be out there. It made me want people to scream my name or scream my nickname while I was out on the field. The coaches that I remember the most weren't really the coaches that had anything to do with technique or didn't teach me cloud coverage. They didn't teach me how to get into a 3-point stance. It was either they taught me a certain attitude about the game, or they took the next level of care. They took me to practice when my parents couldn't make it there. They stayed after practice just to talk to me. It was those type of opportunities that those coaches took that had to do with trust rather than just being on the field and the technique of the game. None of those things actually extended my reason or version of playing the game at all. And a lot
Yeah.
of times I do have parents who come to me now who either did play a sport or didn't play a sport, and they don't understand if there's going to be a benefit for them as a parent to have their children out there on the field. If it's going to help them parent, if it's going to help them create a better bond with their child or not. What would you say to some of those parents?
Well, let me just backtrack real quick because you said something very important about just the human relationship that you build, coach and player. My favorite quote is from a guy named James P. Comer. It said, "No significant learning can happen until a significant relationship is built first." So by giving those nicknames and having those conversations that aren't about football or baseball or the sport, that is huge, because then you can allow the significant learning to come. As far as parents go, my favorite email or my favorite run-in with somebody when I'm on the Sandlot tour, it just happened in Texas a few weeks ago, where a dad, big guy, big mustache, fireman, comes up to me and he says, "Hey man, I used to be that dad. I would yell at my kid. I would micromanage every move they made. The car ride home after the games was miserable,
Mm.
and we did not have a good relationship. Watched a few of your videos, and it changed my whole perspective. I sit back, I allow the kid to control the conversation a little bit more, and most of the time, all I say is, I love watching you play the game. That's a great thing to say
Yeah.
to your child before every game. I love watching you play the game. What does that mean? Well, it means you love watching them when they win. You love watching them when they lose. You love watching them when they score a touchdown. You love watching them when they strike out 5 times. Your love for them is detached from their results. That's huge. I talked to Kirk Gibson, a famous moment in World Series history where he hit the home run to win the game for the Dodgers, and he said, "Yeah, kid, you got to coach the coaches. You got to let them know that when you're coaching your own child or parenting your own child, if you're hanging on every moment and you're micromanaging every moment, it's going to be a lose-lose. One, they're going to get burnt out from that sport because they're tired of all that anxiety and tension that's coming from you. And then
Yeah.
secondly, your personal relationship is going to falter because they don't want to hang out with you when they've got that other thing going on in on the field, in the court, wherever that might be. So it's a lose lose. So what I try and do is ask my daughter, "Hey, what kind of fan do you need me to be for you in these moments?
Mm.
When you're practicing and your coach is teaching you things, what kind of fan do you need me to be for you? Do you want me to ask the coach if, hey, you need any help? I'll be happy to help. Do you like me if I'm a little further away? Do you like it when I clap? Do you like it when I'm super quiet?" And then in the games, and they're more dancers than softball players or volleyball players. They really love to dance. I'll say, "Hey, what do you need from me in those big high leverage moments? Do you like it when I clap? Do you like it when I'm in the back row? Do you want me in the front row?"
Yeah.
And allow them to tell you. They're smart. They'll let you know. And
Yeah,
if
they
you
are.
open up that dialogue and you can be vulnerable enough to say, "You know what, I'm not a superhero. I'm flawed, and I don't know everything. I don't do everything correctly." Then your relationship will also thrive. Kids play better when they're feeling joy. There's a direct correlation between playing better and happiness. So as a parent, definitely go down that lane. How can you
Yeah.
create as much joy as possible for that player, and then just make sure the ice cream is flowing after each game, and allow them to lead the conversation. I think that'll make your relationship much more powerful.
And the ice cream goes a long way too. Like I remember you just saying something simple as ice cream, and sometimes I think about it like, or doing it, but I have to think back to the moments when I was just taking for ice cream, or just if I asked for McDonald's to go to McDonald's after a game, it creates more of a moment with your parents than the actual game did because there's so much going on. You got coaches doing this, and every once in a while you may hear your parents. If something bad happens that has to do with your parents, you remember that, but you remember how the reaction of the game created something in your parents at the end of the game. Like that was the
Absolutely.
most important part that I remember. And I don't know that I struggled. I think I've been doing a decent job being on the field with my son. And I don't know if I've been taking the right approaches. Every single day brings a new opportunity to learn something new. Just the other day, he, I guess, collided with another player, and it was completely by accident. They were just running and messing around, and they just, boom, he fell down, he got hurt, and he started, tearing up, and he was more, I think, frazzled than anything. But naturally, if I would take like the tough route, boy, get up, do this, and da da da. But I remember that I wouldn't talk to the other players like that. I would still kind of take a tough approach, but I wanted to treat him the same way. And another part of me wanted me to another part of me wanted me to just hug him and bring him in and love on him. And I'm like, okay, that's also not something that I would do with one of the other kids. So what is the right thing right there? And without panicking, I still don't know if that was the right thing or not, but the approach that I did take was, hey, come here, what's wrong? Talk to him. And I sent him to one of the other coaches. And I trust all the coaches on the field, but I was able to have him have a dialogue with one of the other coaches. That way I won't, I guess, because I didn't have the answer, do the wrong thing in the moment. How do you feel about that, I guess, scenario or situation?
Well, it's a topic that gets hit everywhere I go. We have coaches clinics wherever I'm coaching, and we have conversations, and this topic gets hit. How do I coach my own son or daughter? And the best thing I've heard is if somebody came, where do you live? What city?
Well, right now I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. So if
Yeah.
somebody came up from Jacksonville, Florida, they didn't know you, they didn't know anybody, and they sat in the bleachers during a practice and they couldn't tell who the coach's son or daughter was, you did
Hmm.
your job. That's a great way to kind of keep score for yourself. And now that means you're going to have to take a step back
Yeah.
from all that baggage and all that history you have with your son or daughter. And I know this from experience as well. If you take that step back and you allow the other assistant coaches, which I think is a great idea, to help them through moments of failure, whether that's physical, mental, social, being disrespectful, whatever that might be, and then allow the other players to teach your kid as well. Let them
Hmm.
learn that way. It's really difficult to do because
Hmm.
we're just wired to make sure our kids are doing it better than everybody else. And when they're a little bit out of line, boom, we go into intense mode. I
Hmm.
learned for me, why did I get intense with my own daughters? Why did I feel different when they messed up versus the other 50? Is because I felt like a failure as a father.
Hmm.
And when that hit me, whew, it made me insecure. It made me want to fight back. It made me angry. So I've learned that about myself. I've become self-aware of that. That I go into this. Oh, I'm a failure as a father because my daughter is not paying attention like the others are. Um, and so I think that's a big reason why you react differently to your own child. So being able to take that step back, take your dad hat off, put your coach's hat on, I think what ends up happening is the relationship gets stronger on the field, and you kind of keep that coach's hat on a little longer into the car ride and into the home, and it becomes a better relationship there as well. So
Hmm.
um, I the, I have a buddy named Duke Baxter. He's on social media as well. He does great content for coaches and parents, but he literally has a hat method where he's
Wow.
had this discussion with his son, and this is for the car ride home. He says, whether it's a great game or a terrible game, here's the deal. If you have your hat off in the back seat, then you're letting me know you don't want to talk about the game. You want to talk about anything else but the game. If you've got your hat on in the back seat, then fair game. You want to talk about it. But on top of that, you got to allow the kid to start the conversation. I think the best thing you can do as a parent during the game is have a notepad. And if you notice something going on, whether that's a reason they're striking out or a reason they are making that bad pass or not making that shot, you don't want to bring that up in the moment. The game should feel like a birthday party. It should be a celebration of all the things you've learned that past week leading up to the game. Take out the notepad, write it down, and then on the car ride home, if that hat is on and the kid's like, hey, why did I strike out? Ooh, let me pull out my notepad. I have some notes. That I think we'll work on this tomorrow in the backyard or at practice. I think that's a really great way to go about it because uh, somebody's got to coach that team.
Yeah.
And if you're a good coach, it might as well be you.
There you go.
If you're just going to take the step back and say, no, I'm not going to do anything, well, you might be you might be giving that spot to somebody who's not a great coach yet, and could cause them to lose that love of the game. So if you're a good coach, then I think you got to try your best to jump in there if your schedule allows. So all that to say, um, it, there's no one magic answer and there's no holy grail for it. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that that son or daughter of yours um, loves you, wants you to walk them down the aisle at their wedding, wants to share things with you in dark moments. That's how I look at it with my daughters. I want them to be free to come to me with anything, any conversations. Same with my players. I want to be that guy I'm coaching a kid, he's 9 years old. When he's 18 and he's in a dark place and he's about to make a very bad decision, I want him to think of me and maybe text me, and invite me to his wedding 5 years later, So,
Yeah.
again, a good coach can change the game. A great one's going to change your life. And that goes for parents as well.
So much of this sounds like the technique portion almost. It's not that it doesn't matter, but when I'm thinking about it, I literally played most of football without understanding the technique and the skill and all that stuff. It was more about wanting to do the right thing for the right coaches because they asked me to. And when I got on the field, I did exactly that. It wasn't until later in my high school years that it was tweaking the way I ran, that it was getting into cloud and doing these type of jams and understanding what to do without my coaches saying anything at all. And it makes so much more sense now too. And I think coaching allows parents, if they're in the arena of coaching, I think more of an opportunity to learn these skills to also use in the household, because you don't always get these different opportunities. Let's say you don't go outside in the backyard and play around. Let's say you aren't um, maybe doing Mario video games in the house, so you don't get a chance to combat failure with your kids and work on those type of opportunities or teach them something completely new. It just could be maybe even the dynamic between you and your child. Maybe you guys just don't mesh as much, right? You're still the parent, they're still the child. But as we know, there's different relationships you have with different kids. So what I'm hearing is like getting the opportunity to also be a coach and a parent at the same time if you're in the right position to do it, because you talked about scheduling, and if you think you're a good coach, could actually put you in a better position in the parenting arena.
No doubt. And I think of it as I coach baseball, so I think of it as barely baseball. And if I come from that place in youth sports, then the skills will come slowly but surely. But I feel like at that young age, same with football, same with basketball, we need to do simple better on the skill development. So one simple basic skill per day is enough for a 7-year-old, more than enough. So that's the barely baseball or barely football part. But way before any of that, priorities of how can I make this a better human one day? Because the math says none of these kids I ever coach are going to make it to the majors or the pros, but they are all going to be adults one day. They're all going to want to go to college one day. They're going to be a father or a mother one day. So how can I create a great human, since that's what the math tells me? That's way more important than those skills. I think you get kind of tied up when all you're trying to do is teach skills so they can win a game.
Yeah.
If we do that, we're going to win more games. When you're a win at all cost coach, you're pretty closed minded and you're missing a lot. You're missing the bullying that's going on, or you're missing how one kid just is miserable because they're getting no attention in right field. If you've got to win at all costs, you're missing the fact that your best pitcher, you're using him way too much and he's going to hurt his arm. He's going to burn out mentally and physically. If you've got to win, if you're narrow minded, you're going to miss the fact that parents are being disrespectful. They're yelling at umpires, they're yelling at referees, and they're showing the kids, they're leading by example that it's okay to talk to people like that. When I would highly disagree, it is not. So, opening up to more of a life coach first, and
Yeah.
then to sport second. I think they're going to consume a lot more skills that way because of all the things we've talked about. You've built trust with them, and you're creating a good human first. That opens you up to, you know what? Let's just teach one basic skill per day here. They're going to consume a lot more. That's the way I go. And as far as bringing that into the house, same thing. I think my dad did a really good job of being very present at every game, at every practice, but he
Mhm.
kept his distance. He would always sit behind the left field fence. He had a lawn chair. He would wear a Hawaiian shirt and he would smile. and he
Yeah.
would treat the 0 for 5 and the 5 for 5 the same. Now he played at a very high level, so that helped him. He'd been there, done that, realized how hard baseball is and competitive sports in general. But there was no fear of the car ride home for me. There was no fear of the big moment. I actually really loved the big moment. I felt like I was clutch in those moments because my dad wasn't going to yell at me if I messed up.
Right.
Yeah, the only time Dad would get upset is if I was disrespectful, if I was throwing a fit, if I was arguing with an umpire, being disrespectful to a teammate or a coach. That's where the priorities lied with him. Same with my mom. So at the end of it, are you making the kid want to come back next year because you're the fun coach or you're the fun parent, and that joy is overflowing? And then are you making them a better person every day that you're around them? Start there. And if you teach zero skills the entire season, you've still changed many lives for the better, which is the whole point.
That is the whole point. And I think some parents also get that point too. I get a lot, and I tell other parents too. It's like if you have behavioral issues or there's different portions of parenting that you can't quite get or you just can't get through, maybe a good idea would to put them in a sport with coaches that you trust or a league that you trust and allow some of those other coaches to help mold and have those conversations with you and be able to also see some things that you probably haven't.
Yeah, a lot of parents ask me, okay, my kid is talented, they're elite, they're ready for that travel ball, club ball. What do I do? I say, go watch that team that you're thinking about joining. Go watch them practice, and go watch the
Mm.
coach because you need to be picky as far as picking that coach that you want. If that coach is about the right things, if they're building character, if they're creating a culture of joy and love of play, then jump on it because your kid's going to have a long career there. They're going to have a great experience. But if you notice that coach is yelling every time somebody swings and misses, if it's toxic, if he's being passive aggressive, sarcastic, just watch the way he coaches a practice and watch the way he or she coaches a game, and you'll get the vibe,
Yeah.
and you'll know what to do. But it is all about the coach. So that's my advice as parents start to look towards that next level.
Yeah, and you want to know the culture of the team too, and kind of see the parents because sometimes you get out there and you might can't tell exactly how the coaches are, but then you hear how the parents are all talking, and it just kind of gets a little funky. And I think understanding to the relationship between the parents and the coaches has to be of a certain caliber. And that's the question that I want to lean into. Before I do that, I just want to say like last week was the first time where I truly, I guess, felt and I don't want to call it a burden, but just the weight of what it means to be the coach on the field and a parent bringing their child to you and say, hey, I'm going to take my hands off for 2 hours. Here's my baby. There was two different instances where a child got hurt on the field and it hit me. It was like, oh, wow. I'm glad I actually paid attention to the training before I got the certification because if something truly happened, they're in my hands right now for these 2 hours. I'm not just a normal old volunteer out here. Or the other day when a child got onto the field and she came over straight to me while he was taking his warm up lap and said, hey, this is what he's got going on this week. This happened in the family and he's just been down and he looks a bit depressed. Like just those type of instances where I'm realizing now, okay, I'm not just out here for 2 hours just pointing around telling kids where to go. It is these parents who are entrusting their child in me for this amount of time at a time. And also when they maybe respond in a way that's not necessarily mannerable or whatever, you get an attitude or a tone. I still remember, okay, they're doing this out of love for their child. They just may not be communicating it correctly. How do I approach the situation with them? So I know I
Yeah.
just said a lot, and we might not even be getting to the question I initially
Well,
said.
I think
I know you
I think I got it. Yeah, I think I'm there, and good on you for seeing that in an empathetic way. That took many years for me to coach with empathy and realize when a parent is upset, A lot of times it's not personal towards you. Don't take it personally whatsoever, and be able to walk with empathy. Build trust with the parents too. So I always recommend before the season starts, before you send an email out with all the expectations of this is how we're going to do this, have a barbecue, cook up some
Mhm.
burgers, invite everybody over, and build trust that way. Get to know each of the parents and just listen to their stories, listen to their journeys. If you just listen to someone and their story for 5-10 minutes and have a conversation with them, there is trust built there just
Yeah.
by you showing interest in their life. When you send that email or you create these expectations, they're going to hear that with more of a loving tone instead of, oh, this is a militant, or he's calling the shots, or she's being narcissistic or self-righteous. Build that trust with the parents. That way they'll hear you. I mean, same with positively reinforcing kids. When somebody makes a mistake, I used to want to publicly shame them or say, "What's wrong with you?" I've learned point out what they're doing right.
Yeah.
I love your stance. I love your ready position. I love what your feet are doing. Now let's talk about your shoulders. Now let's talk about your arm. But coming from that place of praising loudly, constructively criticizing privately and quietly, that's huge. So that's something I live by just as much as building that trust. But back to the parents, yeah, yeah, have some burgers and hot dogs and get to know them. That way, when you need to drop some truth bombs, like,
Yeah.
hey, love that you're here, love that you're present, love that you care. A lot of parents they don't even show up. That is awesome that you're here. Now let's talk about what I'm noticing. I'm noticing the kid is being less productive because you're a little too hands-on, right? You're a little too intense. You're micromanaging everything. I'm noticing as soon as they swing and miss, they're looking over at mom and dad for your approval. So it's a really difficult job, and there's so many different aspects. Like you said, the health of the kids, the mental wellness of the children, the mental wellness of the parents.
Yeah.
There is so much to it, and I'm 20 years deep into this, and I'm still learning, and I'm still making mistakes. And I think that's a key to understand is I'm never going to be perfect at this. I've always got to look in the mirror and say, hey, how am I wired? What are my flaws? How can I turn the volume down on those flaws to get a little better today? That helps a lot. So yeah, yeah, fascinating conversations to have.
No, absolutely. And it's something I think a lot of teams don't do is you get the maybe the normal something like an open house before, but you don't really have the cookout or anything until the end of the season. So you don't even really know the temperament of these parents or who could actually help or how busy their schedule is. And I want to get into the schedule portion because as you mentioned, even for wanting to be a coach, you talked about scheduling if you have the time. I want to get into the family dynamic as a coach. I have 4 kids altogether. I got a set of twin boys. There'll be 2 here in October. I got another one that's 3. He'll be 4 in October. Then I got a 6-year-old who I'm coaching. My wife is busy all the time, and so am I. And when I think about wanting to start coaching, I asked a question and I made sure I had to take some time. I had to pray about it because the first answer my wife was probably going to give me is, I know how much you love the game. I know the bond that you and your oldest son can create. Yes. When I need to also make sure I'm balancing the sacrifice of family and time and the burden I'm going to be also putting on my wife and maybe not being around as much for the kids during that time period too. Can you talk more about how to be successful as a parent who decides to coach?
Well, yeah. I mean, all props to the better halves in all of our families for sure. We have a Mrs. BallGame who holds the fort down so well when I'm on the road or I'm coaching. But I think it's got to be family first. You
Yeah.
definitely have to make sure your uh, husband, dad, and then everything else comes third and fourth place. But for me, the way I create my schedule is I make sure that I'm around for any of the big things. You know, the birthdays, the big dance competitions, because I am dad first, and same with husband first, dad first, and then everything else can come second. And then bring them in as much as you can. I think having my daughters be able to watch me coach is very valuable. I think they see a different side of dad. They see how he's pouring into kids, and then Mrs. Ballgame, she gets a little time to herself in the meantime at the same time. So yeah, got to keep those priorities in place. But I think for my daughters, they know who Coach Ballgame is, and they know everybody calls me that, but they call me Dad. They don't call me Coach Ballgame. They call me Daddy. And so the when I am home, there is one thing I know. They want daddy's presence. They want me to be completely present. They don't want me on the phone. They don't want me on the laptop. They don't want me watching a show. They want me watching them and paying attention to them with that uncomfortable eye contact. So that's what I try to do. I try to sit, quiet my brain, take a few deep breaths, and just pay attention to every move they make, every word they say, because that quality time, that presence is huge. Can't tell you how many times they've said, "All right, mom and dad, no phones today."
Yep.
And man, that's very telling of what they want. They just want you to pay attention to them and be present. So
Yep.
yeah,
You can't get offended when that happens either. You just got to recognize that they're taking a chance to really communicate with you what it is that they need, or that there's something a problem, that there's some type of
absolutely.
problem there, and you just got to get into it. What has coaching probably taught you the most about fatherhood, or at least I don't know if I'm asking the question right, but I think I know how. I think you know kind of where I'm going with this, but I just want to know what has taught you the most, or
I
what
think it's
has
taught
triggered
me. Yeah, I
to
think
it.
it's taught me to listen more.
Mm.
I'm wired to kind of speak and be the subject of attention and be a blowhard and just be the leader. But I think the best coaches, they listen, they pay
Mm.
attention, and they try and meet each kid on their own playing field. Oh, there's the bashful one. So what's their love language? Oh, that's the gregarious, outgoing one. So how are they going to respond best? This is the newcomer. This is the seasoned veteran. Like paying attention and listening to other people, and then listening to advice from other coaches as well. I think that has taught me the most about being a father, and I think they cross over too.
Yeah.
Same with being a husband. There's nothing more charming than somebody that is very interested and wants to listen to what you have to say.
Absolutely.
And so, listen. My favorite teacher of all time was my acting teacher. I studied theater in college, and before every play, that was the one word she would say is listen. Make sure you listen. I think it's a valuable note, and the best coaches are the best listeners.
Like the kids say, listening ears, listening
Yeah,
ears.
listening ears
Sometimes you got to
indeed.
put them on. They definitely do help. Before I kind of close this thing up, because I do have a few other things, at least I want to ask you and give you a chance to really open up about. I wanted to ask you about toughness. And I know it's something we haven't necessarily touched on as we have been traveling through this journey and conversation about coaching, but I feel like that's something that I am, I don't want to say struggling with, but all the feedback I get is either way too extreme to the right or way too far to the left and it doesn't touch it at all. Is that something I should even be focusing on? Or is there a way to teach kids toughness at this 6, 5, 6, 7 age group? And why?
Absolutely. It's definitely in my top 10 pillars of coaching. And I wouldn't call it toughness as much as the ability to overcome adversity. That's really the place I look at, because it's a valuable lesson and it's very necessary. And
Mm.
all of the lessons I learned about overcoming adversity when I'm in a bad relationship or in a very tough moment in my life, when I'm about to be a father, when I'm trying to get a new job. These are all tough things that have a lot of adversity. I lean back on those moments on the field, the
Yeah.
football field, the basketball court, the baseball field, and those teammates that I had and those coaches that I had. I lean on it. So it's a valuable lesson that quite possibly you could be the only one that teaches them this in their entire childhood as a football coach. But you gotta go about it differently for each kid. Toughness and overcoming adversity, it looks differently for every kid. So that's why you gotta get to know them and
Yeah.
find out what their love language is. Is it words of affirmation that's going to get them through this? Is it humor? A lot of kids that are down in the dumps, I'll throw some humor at them and I'll see how they respond to that. Maybe they need a teammate to come over and say, "Hey, I've failed before too." I think there's you're going to have uh, you're going to have the major aggressive, right side here, and the very soft and light on, whatever you want to say. You've got those polar opposites, but
Yeah.
for the most part, even though those are the loudest, the majority of people, they respond to this balance of both. So
Absolutely.
finding a balance, I think, is the second thing. Once you know what they're going to respond to, that shy kid is not going to react very well to firm or
Yeah.
loud, right?
Hmm.
Now the one that's the cut up and the class clown, maybe that's a little more up their alley. But you got to build trust with them first.
Yes.
So find that, but then find that balance. There's definitely a balance, and a lot of times, what I found, the most powerful moments are not when I'm raising my voice; it's when I'm quiet. When I get
Hmm.
quiet, those are really powerful moments, and those are memorable moments. So um, I tell stories. I think storytelling is a great way to teach that life lesson of overcoming adversity. Lots of those stories in the game of football. For me in baseball, it'd be Jim Abbott, who was born with one hand, and overcame so much. Jose Altuve, being very small and turning into one of the best baseball players of all time. So a really valuable lesson that you should lean into, but you don't have to do it the old school way. That idea in my brain of that toughness.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in that tone. I feel like kids really listen to you when not so much the words that you say, but the tone in which you say them. I
Yeah.
also think your body language is very important. But again, I think when I'm ultra aggressive or ultra loud, it just goes right in one ear and out the other. But
Yep.
when I'm sitting quietly with them and just having a conversation that's almost a whisper, there's a lot there. I think you're on the right track, and just try to diversify your portfolio depending on the type of kid. Find out how they're going to respond. But I I think of it like if I'm in a a meeting with my employees, my fellow employees in a business setting, when the boss is just screaming at us, that's not driving me to want to be better or be
Yeah.
tougher.
Right.
I maybe some do respond to that, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
Definitely not in this day and age. So there you go.
I appreciate it. That was good. I'm definitely gonna be taking that with me, and I'm been trying my best at doing the balancing and recognizing which child is which and how their temperament is and how they will respond to things. But I know we talked about a lot here. What I want to ask as my last question before you just tell the people where they can find you is like, as I hear how passionate you are, I know there's definitely like a mission and something that you want to get across to parents and coaches. And I just want to give you a few minutes to do that, maybe to speak about anything that we haven't covered, or just kind of give a message about what it is that you want to get across to them.
Yeah, man, that's a good question. I would say my mission statement now is to create an army of great coaches and educated parents, because that's the secret to growing, for me, the game of baseball. But I think more than that, just growing great humans
Yeah,
is if we can build an army of educated coaches who know how to build trust. And how to engage kids and how to teach love of play and build character, well, then kids are going to have longer careers. If we can educate parents on be a little more educated, just be a little more educated on that, then you're in good shape from the parenting side. So um, I would say build that army and equip all the parents and coaches. Then I think I've done my job. And it's just really good to have conversations with fellow coaches and parents like yourself, where we can listen to each other. And I'm not always right. You don't have to be always right. We can meet in the middle. We can teach each other.
yeah,
Build this community where positivity and character development and joy is at the forefront in all youth sports. Yeah, that's my mission. That's it.
absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. So tell the people, where can they find you?
Yeah, man. Coach at Coach BallGame, I think is my handle on most everything. All the social medias at Coach BallGame. One word. I've got a website, coachballgame.com. And for those of you starting out, I've got a starter kit for coaches and parents. It's called the Coach BallGame Playbook. It's in the Linktree in my bio on my Instagram. It's on my website as well, where you'll find everywhere that I'm going, my Sandlot tour, and all my different coaching clinics and camps. So coachballgame.com is kind of the main hub, and then all the social medias as well.
Coach BallGame, it's been awesome having you. I've already learned so much. I can't wait to start applying it. Guys, until next time. Thank you for watching. You just listened to Here for the Dads podcast with Myer Krah. I am so grateful that you're here. But if you're new to this space, what I need you to do is slow down and subscribe, share, review, or rate. Whatever you can to help me out, because I'm on a journey to create a space for existing fathers and new fathers that's going to allow them to be a little bit more confident and a little bit more efficient at what they're doing. Thank you.